Okay, well, look, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. My name's Lucy. I'm from Study Work Grow. I'm really excited because today we've been joined by Tristan and Rhiannan from Macquarie University. We get a lot of questions at Study Work Grow about applications, particularly early entry applications and scholarship applications. And I thought it would be a good idea to get some experts in the space along to have a bit of a discussion, talk to us about what they see and their thoughts and give us some of their tips. And then they're also going to be here to answer any questions. So today's session is being recorded. We endeavour not to show any participant videos. And if you're worried at all, please just turn off your video. This session will be available to all of you participants afterwards, and we'll also post it on YouTube. It's going to be a 30-minute session today. So I know Tristan and Rhiannan are going to present for about 20, and then we've got some time for some questions after that. So I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands where we're all meeting from tonight. I'm in Cairns, in the home of the Gimmerwoy, Wollabara and Dingji people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'd love to hand over to Rhiannan and Tristan.
Thanks so much, Lucy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Before we start, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we're presenting tonight, the Wallamadigal clan of the Darug Nation. My name is Tristan from the Future Students team here at Macquarie University.
And I'm Rhiannan, and we are two recruitment consultants for Macquarie University. And our role is primarily to look after schools. So any careers advisors and teachers would love the opportunity to grow our relationships and answer any questions, just like we will be today, to help you and your students going forward.
So a big thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to share my screen. And
we'll get started.
Okay, all right. So, in terms of basically what we wanted to do today was, as Lucy may have alluded to in the introduction, give you some of those hints and tips about applying to university. And we wanted to try and make it as universal as possible, and really try and give you that insight into what it is that we might be looking for and the kinds of things that you can use to try and help your students as best you can. So with that in mind, we thought we'd probably just highlight a few key areas while using one of our key early entry programs, the Macquarie Leaders and Achievers, in which to show that. So in terms of the application tips, I guess in summary, those would be: make sure that you're eligible, how best to prepare, check the courses and how it is that you apply, and then, of course, be mindful of the key dates. So for those of you not familiar with Macquarie's Leaders and Achievers, I just wanted to give you a brief overview on this one. And basically, the Leaders and Achievers is an early offer. And by that we mean applications are open now, they close in August, and offers are made prior to the students sitting their HSC. So basically, we look at Year 11 results plus their extracurricular activities, and the offers are made on that basis. So please do ask any other general questions we have about that, but we just, as I said, we just wanted to give you a brief overview to give you a handle on what's happening here. So we feel it's really important to recognise eligibility. So like any scholarship, there's going to be criteria in which that you would need to be eligible for. So in the case of the Leaders and Achievers, it is that you would need to be doing the New South Wales HSC or the ACT SSC, or an IB. We're looking at Year 11 results as part of the application, and we're also looking for students to demonstrate that leadership, service, community engagement activities that they've done in the last 2 years of school.
So what we were going to run through a little bit is how to prepare. And we're going to put this in the lens of Macquarie Leaders and Achievers. And then I'll use that to then kind of explain a little bit about how we could take those tips that we would recommend for our entry program and universally use that for other early entry programs. So for Macquarie Leaders and Achievers, as Tristan mentioned, our application requires activities. So how to prepare those activities would be to get everything ready prior to starting that application and selecting those 2 or 3 extracurricular activities that demonstrate leadership, commitment, and community, and then preparing the responses that are required, whether that's tasks, time, and the name of the organisation. A large part of an application for Leaders and Achievers is a referee, and that means that we have a name, a position, an email, and a phone number. So our next biggest tip is to notify your referees, which is a tip we take into any application and even jobs when you leave university. Notify your referees because they may be contacted. So we always get students trying to make sure that they have all of that ready, and you can actually have the same referee for multiple activities. And it is really important for applications to note the difference between a referee or a reference, because a reference does kind of imply potentially a supporting documentation, whereas a referee is only contact details, which is what Macquarie Leaders and Achievers looks for. Our final tip when it comes to preparing a Leaders and Achievers application is to get your responses ready. We have a massive reflection piece as part of our early entry program for Leaders and Achievers, and what we look for is how a student is able to reflect. And we know that it can be hard to reflect, so we also provide examples that help prompt them in order to get the best out of their response. And then that's a response that would be 1,000 characters max. So that's what we would need for a Leaders and Achievers application. But what does all of that mean when we try and broaden and generalize that about how to help you? So the top tips that we kind of suggest for any preparation for an early entry application is to prepare those responses early and in the appropriate format, a Word document, a Word pad. And that becomes really important, as sometimes a student may want to start their application and they'll do it direct in the application, but sometimes IT may fail or applications time out. And we never want a student to lose their work that they've been preparing or getting ready because an application timed out and didn't save. So all responses, we say, get it early and get it in a Word document. We also encourage students to read responses out loud or to show their application to, whether it's you, a careers advisor, a teacher, or a parent. Sometimes I write things down for work and they sound great, and then they don't read as well as I think they do. And this allows a student to kind of reflect on what they've written to make sure it's actually met the criteria that they want. Our final tip that we would recommend any student apply to their direct or early entry applications are to always get the requirements ready prior to commencing the application form. So what does the application form generally usually look like?
Okay, so this is just a couple of screenshots of the Leaders and Achievers application. I just wanted to give you that for some context. It's always, as Rhiannan said, it can be helpful to go in there, have a look around, see what's needed, check out the criteria, get in nice and early so you're not doing it at the last minute, and see what it is that's needed. So in terms of this one, as I just mentioned, we're looking for those, in this case, the year 11 marks that's automatically received from via NESA, being with the New South Wales HSC, the SSC, or if you're doing the IB, you might need to upload something. So that's just by way of an example in terms of that one. And then it's really in terms of looking at what it is that criteria is. So as Rhiannan alluded to, it's really about really addressing that criteria, making sure that you address each part of it, and that you give yourself the best chance of success in that. And as Rhiannan said, it's really important for someone else to read over that, perhaps give you a helping hand, help out. More heads are better than less. And as she mentioned, best to write that in some kind of a Word document, for example, and then you might be able to use it again another time as well, which is also handy.
While we have provided some screenshots about what our direct application look like, we do have some tips that may be more universal for all applications. You'll probably realise that early entry applications and direct applications all look slightly different. And our biggest tips when it comes to helping students in this sphere is to use a personal email address. Early entry applications, well, for us, maybe before the HSC, can differ from university to university. So it is important to use a personal email address for the students, or to recommend students use their personal email address, as a school email address may actually time out or lapse after they do graduate. And that means any important correspondence may disappear. So we want to make sure that they're using their best email to gather it. We also always encourage students to apply using all kind of applications to maximize the opportunities for a student, which means lots and lots of application numbers. So we always encourage students to write down the institution and the application number, so they are easily able to track the application in the case that they need to update it, or even better, accept an offer, because usually it may correspond to the application number that they've gotten. Our final tip is to always proofread the application as well, as we find that especially for our entry program, once you submit the application, you are unable to change any responses. So always proofread and double check everything in the application, as you won't be able to necessarily go back sometimes to edit.
And as a good friend in scholarships would often say, make sure that using that tip around proofreading, just try to avoid any silly errors. For example, perhaps putting a different university on that application name. I really wanted to go to another university, for example. So always good to get that proofread, check the spelling and so on as well. Okay, so in terms of what it is that you can study, we really wanted to kind of just mention here that it's important to look at all the courses in which it is that you can study. So, and really be across that. So in the case of Leaders and Achievers, it's everything except for the co-op programs and our pathway programs. So it's pretty much anything. So always good to be across that. And any other additional requirements that might be required.
Yeah, so a perfect example for additional requirements for multiple universities, not just Macquarie, are education degrees. So for education degrees, students are generally required to fill out the teaching questionnaire that do look at their suitability for an education course. And this is another one, same thing when you look at direct or early entry applications, prepare those responses beforehand, as it actually may be useful across different institutions as well. So what does it actually look like when it comes to selecting a courses? It, like UAC, like direct applications, may require preferences. So for our particular early entry program, a student can select 5 preferences. And because it's a direct application to our university, those preferences are only for Macquarie. So and this is the biggest tip for any application, always put their dream course, the student's dream course, as first, as that is the course that they are most interested in studying, and we want to ensure that they receive, if they can, the course that they want. So I know it can be scary because students look at selection ranks and they look at different marks and feel like they may have to put something as a lower selection rank or a lower criteria at the top. But the tip is always to make sure it's their dream course, as we'll be able to move down preferences if they aren't actually eligible for that course. And then once you've picked your courses, you submit your application and you're done. And I think the scariest part about that, which leads into our final tip, is, well, what happens next? What are those key dates?
That's right, Rhiannon. It's really important to stay across those key dates. I think it's fair to say that many universities probably won't accept late applications because there might be a hard deadline at their end that they need to satisfy. So please do be aware of those key dates. And as you all know, each university does the same thing, but a little bit different. So please do stay across those dates. This is just an example of our Leaders and Achievers key dates, being the main one of those being that applications are due by the end of August. As Rhiannon mentioned as well, one thing to really be aware of is that for the case of Leaders and Achievers, students can only be made one offer. So again, it comes back to that point of making sure that everything's correct as you would like it in that application before you hit submit. So in terms of what happens next, we're looking at you'll either be made an offer or not. And I guess ultimately where you want to be at Christmas time is having a choice of multiple offers, and which is great for everyone, especially you, given all that hard work. So with that in mind, we also just wanted to mention to make sure you apply to multiple entry programs, whether that be at multiple universities or at the same university, in order to maximise those chances. And in this case, for example, the Schools Recommendation Scheme, which is done through UAC here in New South Wales, being that students can apply for Leaders and Achievers and also to the Schools Recommendation Scheme, and in fact get an offer via both methods. So again, similar, different entry criteria, different eligibility and so on, but really just highlighting stressing the point, please do apply to as many entry programs and scholarships for that matter as may be relevant.
So how do we summarise all of our tips when it comes to courses and key dates? It is encouraging students to place their dream course as first, but we also encourage students to include a variety of preferences as part of their application. That allows them the best opportunity to receive an offer. So by having courses of a similar interest that may have differing, academic or criteria, will allow that student to be in the best position to receive an offer. And our other tip is, once they accept an offer, if they are lucky enough to get an offer, we also encourage them to take that out of their preferences or to apply for more, because as Tristan said, we want to ensure that the students have maximum opportunities when it comes to their offers and the key dates. So as long as you are writing down or helping a student, plan for what is happening next, I think that's our biggest tip, because sometimes they may get an offer or they might not get an offer. And the biggest and the scariest part is, well, I don't know what to do next if I didn't get an offer and I did get an offer. Always knowing that next entry program, that next offer round puts them in the best position to say, okay, in this circumstance, if I was successful or I wasn't successful, I know my next step to get to my dream degree at my dream tertiary institution. I hope that one makes sense.
That's right. And as Rhiannon alluded to, and as I said earlier, it's a great position to be in at Christmas time if you've got a choice of several offers. And that's a great spot to be for those students that are lucky enough.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, our final, tips are to get involved and join those events. So for students, we have open days, consultations, and campus tours. And this actually serves as one of our greatest tips that we provide students, because they don't necessarily know if a uni is right for them unless they've talked to a staff member, a current student, or they've explored the campus. And that allows them to be in the best position to make sure that a uni is right for them. And for careers advisors, we also want to make sure that you have the best information for the topics that are most interested for your students. So we've tackled early entry today, but if you are interested in anything else regarding scholarships and pathways, we host our own sessions as well to help you build that bank of knowledge that a student may want to know about. And we have our contact us, of course, so any careers advisor online tonight can email us at schools or give us a call. And for students, we have our contact centre who are able to assist with any students' inquiries regarding courses, entry and more. And that brings us to an end of our presentation, and we would be more than happy to help with any questions about early entry or more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. That was absolutely brilliant. There aren't any questions in the chat, but if anyone listening does have a question, they want to pop it in the chat, or you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask out loud as well. So, I'd love to just kick things off if that's okay, guys.
Of course.
My first question is, you did mention really early on the extracurricular activities. Would you be able to go through a couple of the ones that you really like to see in a student's application? Are there any that are more appealing than others? And what does that look like?
I actually really love this question. I'm like so passionate about this question. I think when it comes to extracurricular activities, especially if a program like ours is called Macquarie Leaders and Achievers, there's this natural affinity to want to select something that feels like a formal leadership role, whether that's a school captain or a vice captain. I think what's great about Macquarie Leaders and Achievers in particular is that the activities, regardless of what they are actually equally considered, as long as they're able to demonstrate the core skills that we're looking for a student to be able to reflect on. Can a student identify something in their life that has leadership, initiative, and commitment? And then how has that helped in their personal growth? And I think that's what's great, because it actually doesn't matter if a role is formal or if it's sport. It's actually based on the student, and then allowing the student to be passionate about their extracurricular activities, I guess, leads to responses that they feel more passionate about, and then that brings out the best in their application.
And I would just add to that it's, as Rhiannan said, it's really about bringing that experience to life. It's kind of showing that passion and the commitment, and there's all those extra qualities that Rhiannan alluded to. I would stress to make sure that their answer, whatever the criteria is, but it's really about bringing that to life. And for example, not just saying that that they're in XYZ role, or a prefect or a captain or something like that, but really demonstrating what it is that they did in that role, and how it addressed the relevant criteria.
Absolutely.
And really kind of, as I said, bringing that criteria to life, if you like, and demonstrating it.
Yeah, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Now there's a question in the chat. So I note that the Bachelor of Music is included and there's no additional requirements. However, I thought there was an audition required. Is that right, guys?
There is. You are correct. I actually might have to take that on note. Yeah. I'll take that on note. And then I can see, as far as I'm aware, there is no audition for the students who receive an offer.
That's my understanding.
Through Leaders and Achievers. But I can take it on note to get final confirmation. But yeah, my understanding for the early entry program.
Yeah, there's no, my understanding also is there's no audition in terms of that Bachelor of Music. I recognise that at other universities there may be some kind of an audition, but for Macquarie's Bachelor of Music there is no audition. There obviously are musical elements to it, but there's no audition. I hope that helps answer the question, Gabrielle.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. You just on that note for a second, there were the three, I guess education, we understand that there's obviously a lot of requirements with education. The other two that you mentioned that have additional requirements, could you go into those a little bit? Is it more like looking for another essay, or is it wanting to do an interview? There was, I think, Bachelor of Actuarial Studies.
And then marketing and media. Yeah, so both marketing and media and actuarial studies in the course have a large component of mathematics involved. So if you check our website for Leaders and Achievers, there's an additional requirement to have achieved a certain kind of mark in maths in order to make sure that the student is able to succeed if they do get an offer in that particular degree. But it is math for those two particular courses.
That's right. And I'll just add to what Rhiannan said, that as a general rule, there are no prerequisites with the exception of those couple that we mentioned. So I see also Belinda's asked a question. Thanks, Belinda, about the co-op application. So basically the co-op applications, they're open now and they close mid-September. And basically what's required for that is a little bit like Leaders and Achievers. There's an application process, a couple of short answer questions. And again, we're really looking for that passion for either, in this case, it's accounting, actuarial studies, or business analytics. And so those are the three programs for which Macquarie does the co-op program. And in addition to that, we're also looking for a couple of pieces of supporting documentation. So in the case of that one, that would require an attachment from the student, whether it's a reference, report, and so on. But that's really just to support that application in addition to a resume as well. So a little bit different to the Leaders and Achievers, where it's just it's a referee, it's a contact point. The co-op is there are a couple of uploads there. And in terms of the interviews after the application, the short answer is yes. So there's a series of basically the applications close mid-September, and then there's a shortlisting process. Applicants are invited to interview in early November, and those interviews take place in mid to late November. And then we have what would be commonly termed as a conditional offer would be made in December. And that offer is dependent on the students, basically how they go in the HSC. So that's like a conditional offer, whereas the Leaders and Achievers is effectively an unconditional offer. So that's an offer made on the basis that you simply need to complete your HSC.
And I think what's great, just from those two questions alone, they're two early entry programs that Macquarie has, and there's already so much difference in kinds of the application process. But by using those same tips and tricks, preparing the responses, being able to reflect or prepare the appropriate requirements, they're putting themselves or students in the best position to kind of get ready. I can also confirm, just back on that first question, when it comes to the Bachelor of Music, if you can apply kind of two ways, one being audition and then the other being through kind of Leaders and Achievers or UAC. So if you are kind of going down that UAC or Leaders and Achievers route, there isn't an associated audition. However, students can, if they don't have ATAR or UAC, can apply direct through audition. So I hope that helps clarify, and thank you for your patience on that one.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We're just about out of time, but I really appreciate you coming along this afternoon to explain those things to us. I certainly learned something. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Our early entry guide is out now, and we're actually about to release our co-op scholarship guide, and that will definitely have the Macquarie programs in there as well. I think that's coming out at the start of term 3. But yeah, look, thank you so much, Rhiannan and Tristan. I really do appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming along this afternoon and for participating. Like I said, this will be going out via email and will also be on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.